Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, What's New with Summon and 360 and TOTA Services. Today, your presenters will be me. I'm Brent Cook, the Director of Product Management for Summon, and I'll be joined by Amy Pemble, who's the Director of Product Management for TOTA and 360 Services. We've got a lot of great material to cover today. We'll take a little bit of time to talk about some of the changes that you've seen in Summon since the beginning of this year. We'll look ahead to the May and the August release and talk about the roadmap a little bit. Last time we spoke, when I did the roadmap presentation in February, we were still adding the NERS features from your voting for 2022. And NERS, for those who may not remember, is the new enhancement request system or voting system for Igloo and Aluna. So those have been added, and we'll review what those are, where they fall, and how that impacts the roadmap and delivery overall. Then we'll switch over to Amy, who will tell you a little bit about 360 and TOTA, looking ahead to what to expect there. And then finally, I'll finish up by talking about some ways you can get engaged in the Summon community, including some webinars that are coming up. And of course, as Scott mentioned, we'll have time for questions at the end. Please be sure to submit your questions, and we'd be happy to answer them. So let's start off by talking a little bit about some recent Summon accomplishments. At the beginning of this year, we added the ability for you to block the display of specific subject headings. This is configurable by institution, so you can set this for your own institution. And the idea here is we've gotten some feedback that there were certain terms that were showing up in subject headings in the user interface that might be objectionable or inappropriate. Having those as being part of the metadata or possibly part of the record, since it is part of that information, is not objectionable in and of itself. When you include that information in something like the facets, it seems to give weight to that information or legitimacy by including it in the user interface. So people want the ability to block that. You can do that very easily. You can manage your own specific block list for these subject terms by going into the admin console. And as you can see there on the screen grab on the right-hand side, go to settings and subject terms, and then set it to custom. And in that big white block on the right-hand side, you can enter in any terms that you'd like to have blocked. The text is still, as I said, indexed and used for relevance, so those objectionable terms are still in there, so that if someone is, for some specific reason, looking for that information using those terms, they still will be able to find it. They just won't appear as part of the user interface or in the subject term facet. We also added the ability to make full text searching optional. In the past, every search by default for Summon searched all the fields available in the records as well as the full text field. We've made that now something that you can toggle on or off. Users can now choose if their searches should include or exclude records based on the full text matches. The reason why we did that is that it allows for faster, more targeted results for the end user. It means that that long tail will be reduced. It means a faster response time for each query done, and people can still do the full text search if they'd like to by using the facet. And as you can see on the left-hand side there's an example there of the include matches in full text. And so to give you an example, if I was searching on the name Ursula Le Guin, who is an author, if one record had her as the author, if one record had her name in the title of an article, or if one record had her name mentioned once in the full text, maybe a few hundred pages into the text. If you did a search including full text, all three of those would show up in the results. If you did one that did not include full text, the name in the article title, the author name would show up, but the one with the mention in full text would not. And so that allows you to have a much more targeted result if you don't include that full text, but if you want to add it back in, you can. So in configuring that, it's fairly straightforward to do. In the Summon admin console, go to settings and refine your search, and you'll find the ability to change that default search behavior, whether the initial search includes full text or does not. That's right there under include matches and full text default. So that is set to, by default to off. So all Summon searches will search every field except full text if this is set to off. If you want to go in there and change it, you can just switch that from default to custom and switch it to on. And then to have that facet appear, again, this is under refine your search. You use that bottom control right there where it says include matches in full text override. If you turn that to on, then that include full text in your search checkbox will show up in the refine your search area in the facet pane in your instance of Summon. So some recommended approaches for how you might configure this to work for your end users. What I think is the best performance and gives the most option for your end user is to have the include matches in full text set to default of off, and then include the facet or turn the include matches in full text override to on. That will give you the best of both worlds. Most searches will be done more quickly, or will be returned more quickly, and it will shorten that long tail, so you'll have a much more precise search. And then if users decide that they do want to be more thorough and catch everything that might mention their terms, they can easily turn that back on by clicking on that facet when they want to do the full text. So default to off and including the facet to turn it on if they'd like, to me, is the best performance and most options for the end user. If you prefer to go back to the way it was before this change was made, though, you can do that very easily. So that's what I have there under perform like classic summon search. That would be include matches in full text default set to on, so all searches will include it, and do not give the user any way to go in and modify that, which would be to keep that facet off. If you do that, then that means that Summon will be performing exactly the same way it was prior to this change. And then the final configuration you might do, if you just want to make sure that you remove as much noise as possible, if you feel like that full text doesn't add much value or causes more questions than it does help, you can easily shorten that log tail for increased performance and less noise by setting the default for the full text to off, and turn the override off as well. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about QuickLinks. That was something we did last year, and it's working with specific providers to get direct links to full text, whether that's PDF or HTML. The provider list that we had from last year, we've added to that, we've expanded to it. So not only are we working with those same providers to ensure that all their content, or as much as we can, have those quick links associated with them, but we're also adding new sources as well. We'll continue to do this as we go forward, and I'll do my best to keep you apprised of what's happening and how we've improved on the QuickLinks program. But these, again, work alongside of IEDL links and unpaywall and things like that. If you have opted into QuickLinks and a provider does have a link that is a quick link, that would be chosen first, and then whatever preference you might have after that using those other resources. So next, let's take a look ahead and see what's happening with the 2022 roadmap. As I mentioned, since we last spoke, I have received all of the NERS features that in the final list, and what I'll share with you today includes those and timing on those. One change that we did make on the quarterly release dates that I want to call attention to is that when we saw the NERS list and we compared that to everything else and we started planning, we realized that it was beneficial to move all of our user-facing functionality, because we are doing some changes with the user interface, particularly around improving on the UI changes we made in December. Those will be happening in August. So we actually took the other the few pieces that were in May and moved those to August as well, because that worked a little bit better. The end result is that the May release doesn't have any customer-facing or patron-facing functionality in it. So because of that, there won't be a preview window. There is some integration work happening, like some CRVS summon work is happening with the SAML development that will be available for early testing. That will be available, and some other back-end integration, but nothing that will impact you or your users. So we did take the May 4th release, and we will not have a preview for that. The other thing that we were able to do as part of this is get a little bit more out of that August release. And as we did in December, we're extending the preview period a little bit longer. Instead of its usual 2 weeks, it will be 3 weeks long. So that August 3rd release will have a preview starting on July 13th. And then November stays the same. November on the first Wednesday there, November 2nd, and a preview in October 19th. All other months, we will have a maintenance release. The majority of those won't have previews or release notes. However, I will put one caveat on this year. Since we are making a lot of user interface changes in August, as we saw a little bit with the December release, there may be some follow-up or cleanup that happens in the subsequent monthly releases in September and October. So if we do have any changes that would impact the user or the user interface at that time, I will be sure to give as much warning as possible in any type of preview that we can afford as well. So let's take a look at the overall roadmap and the changes to it. As I mentioned, we're still working on the SAML support for CRVS Summon for this Q2 release, and we're also doing some other backend integration work. We are doing some work with Talus Aspire, for example, to improve how we interact with that reading list. And that will be the May release. Again, no preview because there's no user-facing functionality there. But then in the second half of 2022, we have a lot of things coming out, particularly in August. We're focusing a lot of our user interface changes there, in addition to following up with more SAML support for CRVS Summon. And I should call out that it provides a bridge to start SAML for other systems as well. We also in August have the Summon UI refresh, which we are in the process of development and planning with this right now. And so the final scope will be determined by what we determine during our testing. But we're looking at improvements around the quick view or preview pane, advanced search, some library card improvements for CRVS Summon, and of course continuing some refinements that we got suggestions for from the December release. And then for NERS, as I mentioned, we got a lot of great features that came out of the voting process this year. In that quick view, we'll be working on including display coverage dates for e-journals. We're working on improving the way that we identify online newspaper articles so that content is easier to filter out. We're improving open access linking. We're working on collection discovery for Summon over ALMA and custom citation styles. And I'll go into some more details on all these in just a moment. And then finally, we're doing some design and plan work for LTI for Summon. And again, the majority of those that I just listed were all via the NERS voting system. So first, let's take a look at the user experience and what some of the changes we're looking at doing for the user interface. In December, we focused on refining the facet pane and the overall search results page. As you can see from the screen grab right here, a lot of great changes that came out of that. We're now working on improving the quick view or preview pane, the ability to provide more information from a brief results easily by a quick click. As you can see here, we're making changes so that the visual and placement is based on user feedback and expectations that people have gotten from other sites, like common e-commerce sites or library sites they might go to. As you can see here in the image on the right-hand side, for that first result, there's a button that says quick look over the icon. If the user clicks on that, they will get an overlay that has all the information that you have in the preview pane. And we're also looking at what additional information or what other functionality we might be able to include here to make this a little bit more useful. Like, for example, the possibility of being able to scroll through the quick view at the top there where it says 1 through 3. So that's the primary thing that we're looking at for August. In addition to that, as space and time permits, we'll be working on things like improving the advanced search. In doing testing around this, we found that actually there were a smaller subset of features or functionality that people wanted to use from the advanced search page, but the entire advanced search page for most users was more than they wanted or overwhelming. So we're exploring the possibility of sort of an intermediate advanced search page as well. We've already seen the hinting of this by that options change that we did. We changed advanced search to options, excuse me, with the ability to expand that. That was direct feedback from users that they didn't really understand what advanced search meant or what they might get, but options was more familiar. So the idea would be that if you click on that, and again, this is just an idea at this point, a mock-up, a possibility, but they get a abbreviated version of the advanced search that would give the most commonly used fields or functionality there, and possibly even their most recently used fields or functionality for that particular individual or that particular session, and be able to do that right there in an overlay. There'll also still be a link to the advanced search page there in the lower right-hand side that would take you to a page that would have all the functionality you see today. And again, we are testing this right now with users. We're getting feedback from institutions such as yours. And so the end result may look slightly different from what you see here. Next, I want to talk a little bit about custom citation styles. This will be an extension of what you have currently in Summon. So in addition to the set styles that you have, you'll have the ability to create new citation styles based on whatever your desire is, whether that's you like to customize or you have a specific way that you implement an existing standard that's different from how it appears in Summon currently, or something completely of your own making. You'll have the ability to do that and manage that within Summon. I'm also excited to announce that for Summon Over Alma customers, we're adding support for collection discovery. Collection discovery is a more visual way to display search results or collections of specific content. You'll be able to manage these collections of titles by grouping them in categories and then placing them in a format that makes them very easily browsable. And again, this is for Summon Over Alma sites, and it comes to us courtesy of the NERS voting system. We're also doing a lot of work on open system and integration, working better with additional products. In addition to some of the comments I made earlier, like the Talos Aspire work we're doing in the background, we're working on improving the Sierra via Summon implementation, and we're looking at LTI support for Summon overall. So for SAML support, as I hinted at earlier, this initial integration does focus on specifically the connection between Summon and Sierra, and the way we've built SAML support for Sierra, it is based on the standards and should be usable for other systems beyond Sierra. So even if you're not a Sierra customer, ultimately this should be something that would benefit you. As soon as this work is done, we'll take a look at what other changes or systems we might be able to integrate with and expand. But for now, this is adding SAML integration to the current Sierra versus via Summon integration. The SVS integration will support both CAS and SAML. And again, it's a first step in additional improvements for authentication. We'll also begin to look at how we can use this authentication to support features like saved searches and other items that allow for personalization within Summon. Another NERS feature that's coming in this year is the design and planning for implementation of an LTI for Summon. We didn't have quite enough room to guarantee that we can build out an integration or an API. Part of that was that we need to do some design work and a little bit of education around what we need to do for Summon to support this. So for this feature, it's the design and plan for that implementation. And for those who may not be familiar, LTI is a Learning Tools Interoperability Standard that allows for connection of various systems, and it helps for integrating in with learning management systems such as Canvas or Blacklight. So again, for 2022, what we have planned on the roadmap is the initial design and plan for this. Once we do that analysis, we'll have a better understanding of size and scope. And depending on that size and scope, we will schedule that as soon as possible. So it could be early 2023 that we get that, or sooner or later, just again, depending on what we discover during the planning period. So another feature that we got via the NERS enhancement system, and this came from the Idea Exchange, something to help us out with search and ranking, was to better identify online newspaper articles, which is some great feedback. Currently, within the content type web resources, there's a lot of content or records there that have been identified as this, but could be identified as online newspaper articles. We've gone through and done some analysis of the various resources that are ending up marked as web resources versus online newspaper articles, and we are working with the team to correct that. This is both a development and a content feature, so while the development work will be paired with a specific quarterly release for Summon, the actual impact of this feature will happen over time. So again, as I mentioned, we've identified some resources that should be marked as newspaper articles. We will write the programmatic, the scripts in order to make the changes to the content type to convert them from web resources to newspaper articles. And then once that's done, as we process new content and as we reprocess older content or update content, we will run this tool against it, and that will help improve over time as those changes are made in those various content packages. It shouldn't take too long for that process to happen, but it's not like you flip a switch and all the content is updated automatically. We're also working on improving linking to full text. Something I always like to mention is that, Summon is my product and I want to see people using it. And at the end of the day, the end user isn't really looking for Summon. They're looking for the content at the other end of that link. And so working on ensuring we're doing our best with linking to full text is always a priority for us. We have a couple of NERS features here that are going to help improve that. One is ensuring that the open access link is available for open access content. The way that rights are managed and open access is managed currently, if you want to have an open access link show up in your list of links in a brief result, you need to make sure that that content collection is part of your instance of Summon. You set that you have the rights to that. Sometimes an open access link will come in that you haven't done that for, and so the record will get the open access indicator, which you can see there on the right-hand side, the open access word with the padlock next to it, but there won't be an open access link. So we took a look at this and we're reviewing what might be the best way to do it, and we can make sure that there was some type of link always for open access, whether you activate it or not, and give you the ability to turn that off globally if you don't want it. And we've decided that it would make sense for us to add a link to that open access icon so that regardless of what you had for rights, if you turn this feature on, this linking piece, a user would be able to click on the open access link and go directly to the open access source for that content. Another NERS feature is the ability to have all the coverage dates for e-journals displayed in the Summon results. We'll show that with coverage dates with links for title level e-journal results. As you can see on the right-hand side, that can get a little bit long, so that will likely be showing up in the quick view or the preview pane, but you will have the ability to view that quickly. Or it may be in the brief result, but we need to, again, take a look at what's the best way for us to expose this information, because if you look at coverage dates for some journals, they can be quite lengthy. A few other things I'd like to call attention to, but aren't necessarily tied to our release, and things that we're working on, is improving the CDI rights processing, particularly around performance, getting those rights to be generated in a more timely basis. Right now, it takes about 72 hours for those rights to process, and we're working on improving that. We're also taking a look at improving matching and improvements to the merge record so that we can reduce duplicates as best as we can, but then also do some work in how the fields are used and whatnot, and improve the overall data quality there. And I also want to draw attention to ongoing improvements we have around accessibility and analytics. These are two components that we work on with all releases. We take a look at what we can add or how we can continue to support these. For accessibility, we review things for accessibility support before we put it out into production. So that's always going on, and in taking a look at all of the UI changes scheduled for August, we will be running those for accessibility prior to release. But always, when you release something and you encounter things in the wild, in their sort of natural way things happen, there are browser, screen reader, hardware combinations that we may not have tested against, where we may find some issues with accessibility. And always, when we get those types of feedback into our systems, we process those as quickly as possible. Those go to the top of the list for any maintenance or quarterly releases to make sure that we address them as quickly as we reasonably can. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Amy to tell us a little bit about 316 and Entota services.
Thank you very much, Brent, and thanks to everyone who took the time out of their day to join this call. I'm going to spend a little time talking about the highlights of what's coming in the Q2 release for 316 and Entota, and also giving you a preview of what's coming for the rest of 2022. So the first thing that I need to make you aware of is the fact that we have changed the release date for the Q2 release, or the second quarterly release. Originally, it was scheduled for May 11th, but since we are already taking some time in mid-June, over the weekend starting on June 17th, to do an internal database software upgrade project, we are going to combine the release date with that event to minimize service disruptions. As it turns out, the quarterly release would have, or does require, some downtime. And usually that doesn't happen. But because we are also going to be requiring downtime for our database software upgrade, we are combining the two, as I said, to minimize service disruptions. Hopefully you have seen the announcement about the database software migration. In case you haven't, be aware that it is going to begin on Friday, June 17th at the times you see listed here for the various regions. Obviously, it means Saturday for some folks. And it is going to require about 24 hours of downtime for all 360 Entota and Ulrich services. So that includes library staff-facing applications like 360 Client Center and Entota Assessment, as well as the EJP and 360 Link. That likewise means that open URL linking for Summon will be down during that time. So just so you're aware of that, we will be communicating more details about that as we get nearer the date. This will allow you to prepare for that downtime, let folks know what's going on. But also at the end, you're going to have a great new release to play with. Next, please. So a couple of the highlights for the second quarterly release. I'm really excited and proud to announce that we are going to be deploying our very first NERS project. So this is the first time that 360 and Entota services have their own ideas exchange channel, and it's the first time that the ideas that the community suggested there, excuse me, were eligible to be voted on and included. So the first one is changing the way that the results are ranked within the eJournal portal based on whether a search string is found in the main title or the alternate title. And I will get into the details behind that in a minute. The second improvement that we are going to be deploying with this release also comes from Idea Exchange. It wasn't officially voted on, but we saw it. We realized that we already have the information in our backend system to be able to incorporate it into the application. And that is the ability to display MARC record availability percentage at the database level. Next, we are going to be releasing a variety of refinements, fixes for index enhanced direct linking. And in our ongoing effort to support accessibility across our product line, we are releasing some accessibility updates, level A updates for 360 Core Client Center based on a recent review that our colleagues at ProQuest did for a VPAT. I should also include that even though Ulrich is not one of my products, my team does work on it. And there are a variety of VPAT accessibility issues going out for it as well. That's Ulrich's Web. And last but not least, we have done a heroic amount of work investigating some issues that have arisen with the sushi harvesting for Coner R5. To be expected, simply because it's a new-ish standard, I would say. But learning to work with other platforms and learning to what to expect in their message responses has allowed us to surface some good information within 360 Coner and Entota when issues occur. For example, if a report or if no usage is found for a particular reporting period, you're now going to be able to see that message within the application as opposed to just seeing an error and not having any idea why that error is there, as opposed to, oh, well, this is to be expected because there is no usage available for this time. So there's a variety of improvements that will help you get a little bit more insight into what's going on with sushi harvesting for 360 Coner and Entota. Next, please. So to that very first NERS project, this was suggested by and voted on by the community, and it is about how to rank search results based on whether The search string that you use is in the main title or in an alternate title. And you can see this evidenced in the picture on the right. This is a live EJP instance. I did a title begins with search for the word Spanish. And as you can see, the top two results don't actually have the English word Spanish in their name in the main title. In fact, the word Spanish appears in the alternate title, and that's why they're currently ranked as two of the top hits. As noted within the IDEA, this causes some confusion to users because what they expect is, in many cases, that they'd see the search string within the main title of the top hits. So hopefully this will eliminate confusion for any users who experience this, but I should point out that it is optional. If you like the current relevancy ranking, you're more than, you're able to retain that. And I'll show you how. Next, please. So within the eJournal Portal 2.0 administration console, on the results page options, you're going to see a new configuration option, and it's named Sort Search Results by Main Title. It's a checkbox, so it's on or off. By default, it will be off, which will retain the current relevancy ranking scheme. And after the release is live, you can come into the admin console, check this box if you'd like, and then after the daily cache refresh, it will be in action. This configuration option covers all search criteria for titles. So title begins with, title equals, and title contains all words. So we hit each of those search criteria to ensure that there's a consistent experience across the searching. Next, please. So we are currently coding the back end of this. The administration console's portion is done as I just showed you. But here is some actual database querying to show you how it currently works and how it's going to work. So on the left, you have the original relevancy scheme. And as you can see in the top hits that come back from doing the title begins with Spanish, only two of them actually have the word Spanish in the titles. Using the new configuration option, you're going to see results more like what's on the right, where Spanish is present in each one of those top results. And I want to point out that it doesn't mean that the other titles that have Spanish in their alternate title will not display. It just means that they're going to be ranked lower than those with the word in the main title. Right, next, please. This is the second feature that I mentioned came through with the Ideas Exchange that we were able to happily pull off because we had the expertise and the information available to us in our backend system. And this request was to let us see at a glance what percentage of titles within the database have MARC records behind them. So what that translates into is that we've received a MARC record from a provider or otherwise cataloged up a MARC record. It's been normalized within our backend tools, and it's associated with what we call our authoritative record. So this will give you a good idea of, for example, if you're a 360 MARC updates customer, how many full records you can expect based on that percentage. Otherwise, of course, if we don't have a full record for it, the service provides brief records. But this will give you a single kind of at a glance idea of the kind of metadata we have behind the titles in a particular database, and that's going to be in Entoda and Client Center. Next, please. So this is one of our, maybe a second or third go around with us doing some refinement for index enhanced direct linking. This type of linking has been around for many years now. And as we become more adept at linking to platforms, and as platforms change, as document identifiers change, linking syntaxes change, we have to revisit this every now and then. And what we do in order to make improvements and ensure linking accuracy is we take a look at all the reports that you guys graciously provide to us and look to see where we can do some holistic or systemic adaptations in order to make linking more accurate. As Brent said, you know, the end goal is to connect users with their content and make that as invisible and as streamlined as possible. So with this particular go around of making enhancements, you're going to see some improvements and definitely some fixes for some of those issues that have been reported to us. Next, please. All right, so what else do we have in store for 2022, the second half of 22? This is another one I'm happy to say came through on the Ideas Exchange. Again, not officially voted on, but it is something that's been floating around as an idea for a few years. And the idea here is that when you're managing the database order ranking for 360 link, sometimes the drag and drop process is not easy, nor is necessarily changing the priority ranking on the left there just by typing in that box and changing it. It's a paradigm that a lot of folks are familiar with if using 360 and in Tota is like downloading a list, manipulating it, getting it in the shape you want it to be in, and then re-uploading it. So we're going to be providing the ability to download your 360 link database order in a tab separated file and then manipulate it, as I said, and upload it. So you don't have to do it within the admin console. Necessarily. Next, please. An ongoing project we have for this year, and probably honestly extending into 2023, is implementing KBART support with the end goal of adding more providers into the auto holdings management scheme. As you know, we have a proprietary API that works with eBook Central now. It's an enormous time saver. Folks love it. And what we would want to do is to be able to do that with additional providers. Now, for a variety of reasons, folks have implemented KBART to do this kind of communication. And we want to incorporate that as well. So the first step is adding the ability for 360 Client Center and in Tota to understand, validate, map KBART files to our internal scheme, and then eventually work with providers to do that auto holdings management. Someone in an earlier session had asked a question about, do we have a list? And the answer to that, I think, is that we will certainly want to look at the providers that work with some of our other software at Ex Libris, including SFX and Alma. So things like a Springer, Ovid, Elsevier, those would be good partners to work with, especially initially, since they've done the work and understand the process. But we also have a provider relations team that we are working with in order to provide the information, the requirements, the testbed information to providers if they reach out to us and say, hey, we want to get involved in this. So that's in the works as well. Next, please. And in our ongoing infrastructure investment, you've heard about one of these already. We have the database software migration starting on June 17th. In Tota assessment, where everyone gets their 360 usage statistics, and if you're a counter user, your counter reports go here. There's going to be a migration to the Oracle Analytics Server platform, tentatively scheduled for June as well. Might be July. We'll figure that out. But at any rate, that won't be a service disruption for you. There's not going to be any training needed. should just be us kind of flipping the switch to this new platform and won't require work or consideration on your part. And as part of our data quality and rights initiative, the 360 team is also looking to do streamlining and making feeds to CDI more efficient. Obviously, we push an incredible amount of data to CDI regarding rights management. So that is going to be an ongoing project for us, and we will keep you apprised of changes to that and how that's going. And back to you now, Brent.
Thanks. So I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about upcoming webinars and community engagement. I want to personally make a plug for the for Aluna and Igloo. They do a great job, and particularly the Summon Working Group. We're always looking for new members and folks to participate. So if you feel so inclined, it's a great way to participate, and you meet at least once a month with me and Amy to talk about upcoming things, review potential changes, and provide input, and of course acts as a liaison with the community as well. On this slide here, we've got a lot of great instances of webinars and user group activities you can take advantage of. The ones that are coming up, the most recent, you've got June 8th, one on Discover Summon, all about administrative tips for new staff. Now, or if you just haven't done anything with Summon in a while or need a refresher on the admin console, that'd be a great one to attend and learn a little bit more about. The next iteration of this What's New webinar will happen on July 18th and 19th. That will be just after the August release has gone live in the preview environment. So we'll be responding to any feedback you have so far and letting you know what else is coming down the pike at that point. And I should note, for all of these webinars, even if you don't think you can make it at that specific time, it's always helpful for you to sign up. You'll get a link afterwards to the recording, and it helps us understand how much interest there is in these types of webinars. So please register, even if you're not sure if you can make it that specific time. And then the bottom half of that screen is all about the Aluna event this year. It's going to be virtual from May 9th through the 25th. There'll be a variety of programming happening between 1 and 4 p.m. Eastern. Starting with the opening session on May 9th. One that may be of particular interest to the crowd here today is that one on May 24th, which I've highlighted, or which Scott has helped me highlight as well. He helped pull all this information together as well. That's the one that focuses on data excellent content, Summon 360 services, and Ex Libris. That'll be a Q&A, and there have been calls for questions, so please be sure to submit your questions and take some time to attend. And then finally, we have Igloo coming up in September 9th through the 12th. And there'll be more details coming on the specifics around that. Excellent. Well, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for taking some time out of your day to attend this webinar and for all the contributions you do via the idea exchange and your participation in Igloo and Aluna and the NERS voting system. I should remind you, the idea exchange is out there at all times. We, Amy and I, go out and look at it periodically to review what's happening. And if it doesn't end up in the NERS voting, it doesn't mean that it won't end up in the product. We see things all the time that we pull in into the various releases based off of the presence in the idea exchange. So please be sure to contribute. And again, thanks for your time today. And please let us know what we can do to help. Our email addresses are there on the screen. If you have additional questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email either one of us. And again, I appreciate all of your support. Amy?
Yeah, I'd like to underscore everything that Brent has said and also emphasize that I hope you can tell that the theme of us getting suggestions and ideas from the community has been really enjoyable. They've been good projects to work on. They've been revitalizing. And so please continue to contribute to the ideas exchange and feel free to reach out to me for anything you need 360 or in total. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.